Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to CKLA Lesson 1.3. In this lesson, our I can statements are I can compare and contrast the fisherman and his wife and the emperor's new clothes. These are the two fairy tales that we will be telling how they are alike and how they are different that we read last week. I can identify the characteristics of fairy tales in Beauty and the Beast, Part 1. As we read our new fairy tale this week, I want you to think about the things that we discussed last week in Lesson 1 and Lesson 2. You've heard two fairy tales so far. What are their titles? In what way was the beginning of the fisherman and his wife and the emperor's new clothes similar? Most fairy tales have royal characters. Who was the royal character in the emperor's new clothes? Who was the royal character in the fisherman and his wife? Fairy tales often have magical characters or a magic event. Are there magical characters or events in The Fisherman and His Wife? What about in The Emperor's New Clothes? Do either of these fairy tales end in a happy ending? Today, you will hear the first part of Beauty and the Beast. This read aloud is a fairy tale with all of the characteristics that we have been learning about. It starts with once upon a time, has a royal character, has a magical character, and this fairy tale ends with a happy ending. This is a slide taken from part 2 of Beauty and the Beast. The woman is named Beauty. This is the Beast. Take a minute to predict. Which one is the royal character in this fairy tale? As we read Beauty and the Beast Part 1, think of the different characteristics that we have discussed with fairy tales. Which ones are included in this fairy tale? Once upon a time, in a faraway country, there lived a merchant with his 3 daughters. A merchant is a person who buys and sells goods to make money. The merchant was very rich. Indeed, he had more money than he needed. Until a series of great misfortunes occurred. Fortune means wealth, but it also means good luck. What do you think misfortune means? First, the merchant lost 2 of his biggest ships full of cargo in a great storm at sea. When he was forced to give up his lavish home in the city because he could no longer afford to pay for it. Something lavish is very expensive and fancy. The merchant lost his fortune and was left with nothing. He told his daughters that they would have to move to a little cottage in the woods, far from town, and work hard and live simply. Do you think it would be difficult for the merchant and his daughter to leave a life of wealth and comfort and begin a life of hard work? The 2 older daughters complained bitterly, for they had grown accustomed to a life of luxury. What do you think the daughters miss? But the youngest daughter, who is called Beauty, always tried to make the best of things. Several months later, the merchant heard that one of his ships, which he thought had been lost at sea, had in fact landed with cargo of valuable goods to sell. The cargo is the goods that the ship was carrying. As the merchant prepared to make the long trip to the city to claim his goods, he asked his daughters what he might bring them when he returned. The eldest daughter asked for a fancy gown. Eldest means the oldest of the sisters. The second daughter asked for a diamond necklace. But Beauty, who had plenty of things she wished for, but none that her father's money could buy, replied politely, "Please bring me a rose, for I have not seen one since we came here, and I love them so much." What kind of things might she wish for that money can't buy? When the merchant finally reached the ship, he found that most of his goods had been stolen. How do you think the merchant felt to find out that his cargo had been stolen? He sold what remained and made just enough money to buy a dress for his eldest daughter and a necklace for his second daughter. Then he set off for home. Did he forget something? On the way home, snow began to fall. It covered the road and made it hard to see. The wind blew so hard it almost knocked the merchant off his horse. He was worried that he might get lost in the blizzard. A blizzard is a very big snowstorm. The merchant decided that he should stop at the next house that he came to and wait until the storm passed. Eventually, he came upon a large palace with lights blazing. He knocked, but no one answered. He found that the door was unlocked, so he opened it and peered in. "Hello," he called out, but there was no answer. He stepped into the foyer, or the front hall, and brushed the snow off his coat. Curious yet hesitant, the merchant slowly made his way into a large dining hall. To his surprise, a fire was burning in the fireplace, and a little table had been set up with a sumptuous meal just right for one person. Would a sumptuous meal be a simple meal or a meal with many fine foods? "Hello," he called again. "Is anybody here?" Again, there was no answer. The merchant inspected the food. "Is someone eating this food?" he asked. "Would you mind if I had a few bites? I've been riding in a bitter snowstorm, and—" he continued. When there was no reply, the merchant decided that he would have a few bites of food and then look for his gracious host. After he had eaten, he set off to find the owner of the house to thank him. He wandered through the rooms on the ground floor, but neither master nor servant appeared. At last he stepped outside into a beautiful garden. The merchant was astonished, or amazed, to discover that the garden was in full bloom, even though it was the middle of winter and most of the countryside was covered in a thick blanket of snow. You think it's strange that the trees and garden are untouched by snow, or do you think it's something that would normally happen? In the garden, birds chirped, flowers bloomed, the air was sweet and balmy. Balmy means the weather was warm and calm. The man explored the garden until he came upon a row of beautiful rose bushes. He remembered that Beauty had asked him to bring her a rose. He reached out to pluck a rose, but just as the stem broke, he heard a loud roar behind him. "Who told you that you might gather roses in my garden?" said a low, gruff voice. The startled merchant turned around and saw a fearsome creature who was half man, half beast. "What?" said the beast. "Is it not enough that I have given you dinner and a place to wait out the storm? You must also steal my roses?" The beast thought the merchant was ungrateful to pick the rose after he gave the merchant a nice meal and a warm place to stay. "Please forgive me," said the merchant, falling to his knees. "I tried to find you to thank you for the meal. I will pay you for it, if you like. As for the rose, I only wanted it for my youngest daughter, Beauty. Her only wish when I left her was to return with a rose for her. Your gardens are so magnificent. I didn't think you would miss a single rose." "You are very ready with excuses and flattery," Beast said, "but that will not save you from the punishment that you deserve." Flattery means compliments, so he was saying kind things about the beast. What do you think the beast will do to the merchant? "Oh, forgive me," said the merchant, "if not for my sake, then for the sake of my daughters. If I do not return home, there will be no one to support or take care of them." There was a long pause. Then the beast spoke again. "What do you think will happen next? Will he let the merchant go?" "I will forgive you," he said, "on one condition. You must send one of your daughters to live with me. Go and see if any of them are brave enough and love you enough to save you from a life in my castle. If one of them will come for you, you may send her in your place. Otherwise, You must come yourself and face your punishment. Do you think any of the merchant's daughters would replace the merchant? When the storm was over, the merchant returned home. He gave his daughters their presents: a gown for the eldest, a diamond necklace for the second, and a rose for Beauty. The older sisters were delighted, but Beauty could sense that something was wrong. "Father," she said, "why did you sigh so deeply when you gave me that beautiful rose?" "In a few days I will tell you," said the merchant, "but for now let's just enjoy being together again." Now take out activity page 3.1 in your folder. As you read each of these sentences, you are going to decide which event took place first in the story and which event came later. You are going to put a 1 on the event that happened first and put a 2 on the event that happened second.